Hi, this is Red Band, and you're listening to your Mom's House podcast. If you want to download this episode and all the episodes, please subscribe to us on iTunes. Search the iTunes store for Death Squad and hit subscribe. Also, don't forget about deathsquad.tv. There it has all the links to all the guests that we have on the show, has their Twitters, also has all the video components of each of the podcasts, and also you can donate. Lately, we've been so swamped with you guys downloading that we've had to switch servers. We're switching it for the third time now, and your donations have helped, but we are already in big trouble. So if you guys can donate, that'll be great, and we appreciate it very, very much. Now here's Tom Segura's Your Mom's House podcast from Australia. Ooh.
Here we go. All right. We're rolling another episode of Your Mom's House from Momstralia in Melbourne. I'm the only mommy here, but I have a wonderful guest with me. My other partner in crime for the last 2 weeks, Mr. Moshe Kasher, who says that I come pretty good to pronouncing his name the way I'm supposed to. Is that not correct?
Yeah, you're pretty much sticking it, yeah.
How are you supposed to say it, though?
I don't want to confuse the listeners at home, but it's just, you just call it Moshe Kasher, but, I mean, there's a subtle, like a real person would pronounce it.
A real person.
Yeah, like a Jew.
Right.
That's what I mean when I say real person.
Right.
Would say, like, Moshe. Do you hear the subtlety of that?
Yeah. It's at the end. Moshe.
Yeah, yeah, kind of Moshe.
Damn, man, your eyes are really nice. I've never
Yeah.
seen in this light.
Yeah, I got really pretty eyes.
Your eyelashes, too.
Yeah, I'm straight up gorgeous.
What? Why do you always keep those glasses on, hiding those...
You think I should take them off?
Yeah, man. What are you doing?
These glasses are so quintessentially me. I've thought a lot about it. You know, I think of it like, in the Bible they say that Moses went up to Mount Sinai, and he received the Ten Commandments from God. And when he came down, he had to wear a mask because the information that he had received and the proximity to God was so intense that he had, like, crazy beams of light, like, shooting out of his countenance, and that if he had come down with his regular face, that it would have blinded the people and they wouldn't have been able to see him. So he came down wearing a mask with the Ten Commandments, which is kind of an interesting image, like Moses in an iron mask with 2 stone tablets. So I've always thought like that about my glasses. Like, if I were to not wear my glasses, the beams of fine coming off of me would be so overwhelming to women that they wouldn't know what to do. Everybody would suck my dick. You're a married man, right? You don't want that.
Right. No, I don't want that. I don't
Yeah.
want that at all. That is by far, by the way, like one of the best reasonings I've ever heard of somebody and why they wear glasses. It's really amazing that you put that together. Is this a speech that you've often given, or
I mean, I've thought about this.
You've thought about this. Clearly, you put some thought into it.
I also can't see, so I need
You
to
don't see well at all.
No, I can't.
What's your
see.
vision?
I don't know. What would it mean anything to you if I gave you a number?
It would mean something to me.
I don't know the answer.
1,000.
It's 1,000. It's 1,000. Yeah, my vision is 1,000. Yeah.
To give our listeners some background, I mean, we're just jumping right into this. Moshe and I and Hannibal Buress and earlier last week, Garfunkel and Oates were invited over to perform at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, which is one of the biggest festivals, one of the biggest comedy festivals. And this is their 25th year, and it's the festival itself is really busy. There's a lot going on. Personally, for me, it's definitely the most active festival in terms of like where everybody's really into it. I mean, Montreal is pretty, that city's behind their festival too, but I feel like this is kind of another level in a way.
Oh, really? I feel like Montreal is equal to this.
Equal to this?
That feels like it to me, yeah.
And if you don't know Moshe, he hails from the Bay Area, Oakland specifically, correct?
Yep.
And you started stand-up in San Francisco? Or Oakland, whatever that area?
San Francisco and Oakland, both. I did both. We were talking about earlier this week about doing black rooms, and when you first started, like you used to do that, right?
Yeah, I definitely did much more. And I also, I did weeks with black acts who,
Right.
their audience was like 100% black.
Yeah, man. I did. Well, we were talking about when I would open for. I opened for Bruce a couple times. Not everybody, probably your listeners, maybe don't even know who Bruce. How many listeners do you have?
I don't know. I don't know,
if
but
I want to waste this story on your podcast.
No,
I'm
do
just
it.
kidding. I'm totally kidding. But I opened for Bruce a couple times back when I was first getting started. I was hosting, and they wanted a white host for some reason. I think they just wanted to get any awkwardness of the show out or something.
Yeah.
And the fucking Bruce's middle act was a guy named Black Boy.
Oh yeah, I do remember. This is amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're emceeing.
So I'm emceeing, and
Bruce
Bruce's
is the
crowd.
headliner,
Bruce is kind of like he's like a semi-clean, but very good, but very charming kind of. Basically, the point is that he brings a crowd that is all black, mostly conservative black people, kind of like, working class to sort of upper middle class black. So they're very conservative, churchy kind of black people. They're already unclear why I'm there. When I come on stage, they're like, who is this white boy? Why is he telling his ridiculous jokes? And then at the end of my almost bad 15-minute set, I'd be like, all right, well, that's my time. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to your featured performer this evening, Black Boy. And nobody would know that the dude's name was for real Black Boy.
Yeah.
And I would just fucking say his name and beeline for the back of the club, just like run away and hope that he would take care of everything. What an interesting name for a comedian. Like,
we were talking about that too with Hannibal that morning of black acts who adopted just absurd stage names.
well, I was thinking it felt to me every night like I was saying, like, ladies and gentlemen, that's my time. Say hello to your featured performer, Watermelon Chicken Man.
Right. Well, and they're actually there's a performer named Food Stamp.
Oh yeah, Food Stamp, Damn Fool,
Scruncho,
Shucky Ducky,
Hamburger. Hamburger.
Oh, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot. There's a dude there's an Indian performer in San Francisco named Kabizi.
I know that guy.
You know Kabizi?
Yeah.
I think he's going by Kabir Singh now.
When I worked with him, which was not too long ago, he opened for me on a show.
Yeah.
He was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go." I think he was middling, and he was telling the MC, he's like, "All right, so bring me up as Kabizi." Nah, just bring me up as Kabir. And I was like, "You haven't chosen a name yet? Like you're going back and forth between names?"
Well, first of all, Kabizi. I mean, I'm not trying to talk shit, but
Yeah.
the whole easy thing is going to go out of style anyway.
Right.
Like eventually, that's what happens with these kind of like nickname things is that they become dated. It's like nobody will ever remember that people used to go for Sheezy.
Yes,
It's and then it'll just be like, well, why are you called Kabizi? Like,
right.
And Kabir Singh, that's a good name, right?
It is, yeah. It's and you're right. The Easy is going to be dated.
Yeah.
If not already, quite soon.
Yeah, like I used to when I first started comedy, I called myself Schmendel, the Moil of comedy, and I would come on. I had a big bag full of like circumcision tools and stuff, and I would make tons of circumcision jokes. And at the end, I would bring this baby out of the bag, like a fake baby, and I'd just suck the baby's dick, right, and then it would just ejaculate Kedem grape juice all over me. So I'd just be dripping in purple juice and baby cum, Yeah.
How'd that go over?
I mean, it definitely brought me to where I am today.
I gotta say, just you saying this right now highlights to me one of the things that had stood out to me the most in Australia, and that is just you going to those places right now is so American, and I realize how American it is to go like over the line and like
100%.
There's an article that came out today about political correctness in Australia, and I got cited in it.
Yeah, interesting.
From my opening night joke, and I was just actually it made me think of basically the opening night. I made a couple jokes, and the thing that actually stands out to me the most now is how not crazy they were, like how they weren't really extreme jokes.
Yeah, totally.
But here, like the first one is actually. I feel like it's like a sarcastic, silly joke, which was, I thought I was dead. I said that the flight was so long I thought I was dead, but then when I got here off the plane and I saw all the white faces, I realized I was in heaven. And
this is a good joke,
right? It's
man.
good, and it's like it's not like, hey man, that's fucking mean, right? Like that's crazy that you would go there.
Yeah.
It's it's kind of light. It's funny, but like that is cited in the newspaper article, and I was like, wow, they really are like way like that joke. People wouldn't blink at in the States. They would be like, oh, he's making a joke because of how white our city is. That's the joke.
Man. And it's like, I will say, I am not a jingoist. I don't give a fuck about America. I'm not even really that into America, like sort of on a theoretical level. You know, people like, greatest country in the world. I could give a fuck about it.
Yeah.
But people in other countries are such bitches. Like, and it's going to sound, I know this sounds so fucking, like, American to say, but people, especially when it comes to comedy, are just some straight up bitches. It's like, do you not understand the context? Obviously, you don't. What do you actually? They think you're coming out and making a white supremacist speech,
Right?
Or are you a comedian making a joke? Right. And in America, people are down to fucking get their hands dirty,
right,
with comedy. And yeah, man, I'm tired of like. Oh, and the other funny part is that Australia is in fact more sort of wrapped up in their own racist issues than we are, and in a different way, obviously.
Yeah.
Like we might be more racist. I don't even know. The point is, people don't even want to talk about their racism problem here. They want to say, don't discuss it.
Right.
And then in private, I'll hear like, oh, those fucking Aboriginals, you know, they're all just sitting around. You don't know them, but they're just disgusting.
Exactly.
This is a real conversation.
Right. Yeah. And the other joke I made was in reference to Aboriginals, but when I explained it to like some locals, they were like, "Oh yeah, we're wildly racist." Like,
yeah.
But what happens is like press, I guess, and maybe some of the artsier people at this festival are like, you know, let's not discuss something that's going to be uncomfortable.
Right.
You know, like it's like, well, I don't know. I just feel like maybe it's just solely American that like, in addition to everything, I'm not saying comedy has to make people uncomfortable or whatever, but we definitely are open to like somebody saying something that's a sensitive subject matter. Like sensitive subject matters for a lot of American comedians are what they do solely.
Yeah, but it's interesting because it's like, then you know the acts that are big in America or big outside of Australia, like Brendan Burns and Jim Jeffries, are two incredibly offensive and inflammatory comedians, and they are both not famous in Australia.
That is incredibly interesting. Yeah. And you know, I'm not familiar with Brendan, even though we got to hang out with. I got to hang out with him that one day with you guys. And he was a great guy and a lot of fun. But Jim, who I'm familiar with his stuff, is like incredibly offensive.
Yeah.
And you're right. He's massive in the UK. I mean, massive. And in the United States, he's definitely a notable comic, and he does, you know, like big venues. And he's getting more and more popular, I think.
Yeah.
And this is the one place where he's from here. He doesn't play here.
Well, I mean, it's going to sound really chauvinistic, but I just think America is the best place to do comedy in the world. I think in my mind at this point, there is no question about the fact that American comics are the funniest comics in the world, and that America is, it sounds so bad, and that America is the best place to perform comedy in the world. There's no question about it. I would say maybe the British and Australian work ethic is better. They write more, they do more. They are probably more dedicated to their craft than American comics are, because American comics will kind of skate on really strong material for 5 years, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, really, you know,
Sure.
I have jokes in my act that are 4 years old, you know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm sure you do too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I less and less, but, you know, I'll hold on to the gems, and get rid of the bullshit and then add new stuff in. But there's no there's just no, to me, there's like no question. I'm going around, I'm looking at who the American acts are here, and no, this just sounds so terrible, but I'm going around looking at who the American acts are here. People are like, who do you recommend? And I'm like...
Yeah, I was with you we were just at a store and somebody asked Moshe who he recommends, and you go...
All I got to recommend are the fucking American acts that are here. Not that no one here is good. There's many good comics here, but if I'm I don't even want to finish what I'm saying. But basically, I'm content to stay in the States and do comedy there because people, I think it's just like you said, people say Americans don't get irony. That's like a thing that people say.
All the time, yeah.
What I think is, I think that people in other countries, in their comedy scenes in other countries, don't get, they have a difficult time differentiating between what the person's saying and what they might be meaning.
Right, exactly. It's very literal.
It's very literal.
Yeah.
And it's like when I'm on stage, I got this joke about when I was in I was in Ireland, whatever, and I'm talking about I want a person to die. I want him to catch on fire and burn to death in front of his family. Do I mean that I want him to die? Of course I fucking don't. I mean, are you retarded?
Yeah.
But I feel like it's these little separations that people in the States, I don't know what it's about. Maybe it's that people in the States are more grimy, or maybe it's that we've had stand-up longer, so it's had an opportunity to develop. I don't know.
Well, no, I think it's interesting. I mean, I do think that stand-up at its purest, and I don't know if that's a term that maybe is misusing, but it is a wholly American art form. Like when we talk about what do I need to study to what's stand-up? You essentially, I mean, this is subjective and people could disagree, but you're going to list American guys. Whether you're talking about where it started, where it came from, who's the best, who developed it. You talk about, Lenny Bruce or Dick Gregory or Richard Pryor or George Carlin, and then all the way up to today, who's holy shit, this is how you do it. And then we get into today to Louis C.K.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
they are American, but there are great.
Who are the greatest stand-ups who come from other countries? Maybe Eddie Izzard, I would say, is probably one of my favorite stand-ups of all time. Billy Connolly. I don't know his work very well, but he's the most famous.
Yeah, he's really highly regarded.
Yeah. The most famous. Who's the most famous Australian comic of all time?
The most famous Australian comic, I guess I don't know. I feel like a fool actually even attempting to answer that.
Right.
I know that in the country,
it's Arj Barker.
That's right. I guess Carl Barron, is that the guy's name?
He's the biggest act in Australia
right now.
Yeah,
but I don't know if he's the biggest ever.
I don't know either. But yeah, I mean, right. So the big acts, almost all of the big acts that have made it internationally are British, and I would say the British have probably the most happening. The English they have a very developed stand-up scene in England that is incredibly diverse, and I mean, I'm not saying Australia doesn't. Australia does, but we
have met some great. We have to clarify that we're not saying there's not great Australian acts. There are great Australian comics.
For sure there are. When I was here in Sydney, I was working with a lot of really great guys. There's a guy named Michael Workman who's kind of
I saw that dude.
He's funny, man.
He's great.
Yeah, he's kind of like a goth kind of comic, very sensitive guy. I don't mean he's sensitive. I mean his act is sort of soft and sensitive in a very good way. This guy Chris Wainhouse I worked with is really, really funny. Bruce Griffiths is a one-liner guy, a la Stephen Wright. And there's great acts we've seen here,
Was Bruce? Did he do the Festival Club the other night?
No.
There was an Australian guy. Shit. Now this sucks. Who did the Festival Club last night?
Yeah.
That did very dry one-liner shit.
Yeah.
That was fucking hilarious.
That was great. Yeah, there's some good comics here, man. Who else did we see that we really liked?
Well, we should mention that we all had a blast at Irish comedian Jason Byrne's show.
That's true. Jason Byrne was real fun, man.
That shit was so much fun.
Yeah.
And he was hilarious and did he's a very well-rounded comic. He did, he had straight stand-up, he had amazing crowd work, he was just fun all over the place. What else? We saw American Paul F. Tompkins' show. We love that show.
Paul's great, man. Paul's a real sort of raconteur, kind of Mark Twain-y kind of guy. His act really does smack of Mark Twain, If you're going to smack of anyone, it's who your influences. If you can say Mark Twain, I don't know if Paul would say that, but it's just he really is a storyteller, a gentlemanly kind of storyteller. Some of the other guys I've seen here, you know who I really enjoyed was Steve Hughes.
I didn't get to see him.
Yes, this guy Steve Hughes, I'd never heard of him before I came over here. But
is he Aussie?
he's Australian, yeah, and he's like a heavy metal guy, long hair, and he is throwing jokes out and on a real kind of high sort of. It's like, and I just sound like such a pig, but it just really reminded me of American stand-up.
Really?
Yeah, it did. I mean, he's real, just throwing jokes from his hip, really dark, nasty stuff. He was hilarious, man.
Eddie, if we ran into Steve on the street and Eddie knows him, we were talking, then Eddie was like, man, when he left, he was like, dude, that guy is fucking brilliant.
Yeah, he said he was like the Doug Stanhope of Australia, or put him on the same level as Stanhope, which, I mean, that's a pretty high compliment.
Yeah, for sure. That's a very high compliment. But anyways, overall, like, what's your? We covered a lot of, obviously, your thoughts on stuff, but your feelings about this festival, performing here. Did you have a good time? Have you had a good time?
Sure, 10 out of 10 every night. 10 out of 10. Knocking home runs out of the motherfucking park. Here's the thing. I've never had a bad set. And a lot of comics talk a lot about that, like about the experience of bombing. Mm-hmm. That's not a thing that I've experienced. And
you've done a lot of shows.
I've done 4 shows, and every one of them has been really good.
That's like one a week for a month.
It's been one a week. I've been doing comedy 10 years.
Right.
So every 3 years I do a show. But it's a super long show. It's about a month long.
Okay.
It's the way that, that in the Bible, we're back to the Bible, like King Herod used to bathe. People back then, the kings would bathe. They would bathe once a week, but they would bathe for 24 hours straight. They would bathe for 12 hours. They would start in the morning. They would take their dirty, filthy, fucking gamey, lamb-ridden robe off because they'd been wearing it for a week in Israel in the desert. So they would peel their disgusting king robe off. And then they would start by, having somebody like shellac body fluids off of them, some sort of filthy Philistine with a kind of palm frond. And then they would go into like one little hot bath. And they would come out of that hot bath and somebody, like a Nubian princess with her tongue cut out, would jerk him off. And then he would ejaculate. And then when he was done ejaculating, they would clean up the ejaculate and they would put him into like a sort of a eucalyptus sort of steam room. And then when they were done steaming out the filth, then that would come out. And then now it would be a Chinese concubine boy, like a 9-year-old boy, fuck the boy in the ass. And then it would just be this very long process. That's really the way that my comedy works.
You have a very simple road of getting there. That's what I like. That's laid out for me. Like, that's how you do it.
This is the way.
This is the way to do it. American
style, layered
American style. Yeah. We jumped ahead to the wonderful time we're having here. We have had a good time. We've had some good meals. I fucked up, by the way, by not taking your guys' advice and trying that coffee until today.
Oh,
that shit was by far the best fucking coffee I've ever had.
Oh, ever had?
Yes.
Oh,
that shit was amazing.
Yeah, Melbourne is like, I guess, a coffee town.
Did you know that before you got here?
No, I didn't, but I'm from San Francisco, which is also sort of a coffee town.
Yeah.
L.A. tries to fancy itself a coffee town. I don't know if it really is.
No, this shit's phenomenal. These cafes are good, man.
They're good, and I'm going from here to Portland, which is also a coffee town.
You're lying.
Am I lying?
You are lying. You're not going from here
I'm
to
going
Portland.
from here to Sydney.
Right.
And then I'm going home to Australia. To Oakland for 2 days, and for Passover, another thing from the Bible. And then I'm going to Seattle.
Jew.
Yeah, I'm a Jew.
Yeah.
And I'm going to Seattle. Actually, one of the reviews I read, it was just somebody talking shit, was like, yeah, Kasher's act relies mostly on 2 concepts: that people think he is gay, which he is not, and that he is Jewish, which he is. I was like, all right, touche. Anyway.
My favorite one for me, by the way, was somebody ended the review was, he's good, but not that good. I was like, oh, man, why did you have to qualify it like that?
I've stopped reading all this stuff.
No.
It's just fucking retarded.
Yeah.
But then I'm going to Portland to the Bridgetown Comedy Festival. I'm going to Seattle. I'll be at Chop Suey on 420.
That's where you're going to do a show?
Yeah,
okay.
At a club called Chop Suey in Seattle on April 20th.
Let's go back a minute. I want to go back to, because we got ahead of ourselves. How did you start doing stand-up? And, like, when and all that?
I started stand-up in September 11th, 2001. There was an attack on the World Trade Center. And
9/11?
Yeah, 9/11.
Right.
and it's a day that I won't ever forget.
Uh-huh.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That has nothing to do with it.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
okay.
I don't know why I brought that up.
Okay.
But
Uh-huh.
the summer of 2001, June 11th.
June 11th.
No, at some point I was studying theater and writing plays. I was writing plays before I did stand up, and
I would cast you as a playwright. You have a good playwright look.
yeah. So I was doing that, and I was acting and stuff, and actually I was ready to leave acting behind for a long time. I was like kind of over it. And then I got into playwriting. I was like, oh, this is like what I want to write. And then I went to back east in the summer, and my friend Chelsea Peretti. Do you know Chelsea?
I know of her. I'm not friends with her.
Chelsea's a stand-up, and we went to junior high together. And I was in New York visiting, and I saw Chelsea doing stand-up. We were hanging out. And she's like, I want to do this spot. And so I went and watched her do stand-up, and I was like, oh, shit, this is the thing. This is the mix. This is the plays and the acting kind of in one.
Yeah.
And so I've told the story so many times, but so she was coming back to Oakland that August, I think. And I was like, okay, well, I'll have written 5 minutes of material by the time you get to Oakland, and then we can go do an open mic together. So she did, I did, we did, and the rest is history.
Really?
Yeah.
So she's very much a part of your getting into this.
No doubt. Yeah, no, Chelsea is for sure the...
And for those not familiar with Chelsea, she's obviously a stand-up, a well-liked and regarded stand-up, and also a writer as well, right?
Yeah, she writes on Parks and Rec, and she wrote on the Sarah Silverman program, and she just had a Comedy Central Presents this last season, just like you, Tom, and she's hilarious, a great comic, and one of my best friends.
All right, so for everybody who doesn't know Chelsea Peretti, go check her out. She's awesome. So then how long do you stay in San Francisco before you go to L.A.?
I moved to L.A. in October 2 years ago. So this October it'll be
recently.
Yeah. So this October it'll be 3 years.
Was it? I always wondered because I'm way different. When people ask me like, "Hey, where did you start stand up?"
Yeah.
I started in L.A. and that always blows people. They're like, "Why would you
Right.
do that?" And I always tell them the truth, which is that I didn't know any better.
Right.
Like I was just too naive to know that. But I always recommend to people, like I recommend to young comics when I'm working in a city. I always recommend to them, get good where you are and then move.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's essentially what you did, right? You waited until you're like, I have these at least decent chops before I move there.
I started really, really good.
Right.
So it wasn't really a process of
Of development. So you started great, but
Yeah.
did you feel like though that made a difference? Like when you arrive, and like people don't realize that LA, we get an influx of like just fucking unbelievable amount of people who want to act, write, direct, perform, stand up, whatever, every day, and you're really just another number. But when you arrive with something, you can stand out.
Well,
more.
I mean, I think about that all the time, man. Anytime I get depressed about my career, I think, Jesus, man, of the faceless, anonymous masses that are out there fucking clamoring to try to get noticed in any way, like, the fact that I'm at all where I'm at is really kind of a blessing. I mean, I don't think it's a blessing like, oh, I got lucky. But I don't think I got lucky. Although luck does play a part
In everything, sure.
in show business, for sure. There's no question about that. And in some ways, I got lucky. But I think about like luck won't do you any good if you're not putting your money down on the roulette table.
Yeah.
And it's like, so in this analogy, putting your money on the roulette table is developing a skill set. As in, so the money that you have to bet is the skill set that you developed. And so when you come to LA with a lot of money, a lot of cachet that you can put down on the table and bet, you have a really high likelihood of hitting a jackpot at some point. If you come to LA with nothing and you start betting right in that moment, you're gonna fucking go bust. And people like you have a harder road ahead of them because they a lot of the times what happens is that somebody will start in LA and they'll go up on stage in their first 6 months, and then the head of development at Comedy Central happens to be in the audience and go, oh, okay, so that guy sucks. Mm. And then 2 years later, you're like, oh, I'm good actually now. And they're like, nah, I think you suck because I saw you. So I didn't have that. I was in San Francisco sucking
Yeah.
I sucked as much as I could in San Francisco. Then I started not sucking. Then I got good. Then I got good enough to move. Then I moved to L.A. and then I got noticed, and that's a nice thing.
See, all young comics that are listening, that's good advice. That's the way you do it right there.
True.
Get good and then move to whichever. I mean, I think it's actually different if you move to New York, because you can move to New York to get on 100 stages if you're a stand-up and you just want to do stand-up.
I would say move to New York after you've been doing comedy for a few years.
So you know
5
what
years.
to do, how to do shit.
So yeah, I mean, if you move to New York as just a bad comic, then you're just,
Yeah.
dude, you're not going to get anywhere, man.
Yeah. The other thing, so I think you definitely nailed that. The other thing that I think the quality that you have that is so important, and I guess I don't even know if you can really teach somebody this or develop it, but it is basically imperative in comedy, is that you have opinions. Like you're opinionated.
Yeah.
Like here's the thing about stand-up or about comedy. If you are indifferent, that is the least interesting thing in the world. Like I hate watching comics that are just like, I don't know, I don't care. Almost as much as I hate having conversations with people that have zero opinion on anything.
Right.
It's just fucking boring, man.
Yeah.
And like I don't think you have to have the popular opinion. You certainly don't. You just have to have an opinion on any number of things. And I think you definitely, you're your own person. You have your own thoughts and opinions on things, and that makes you more interesting, certainly to talk to off stage, but it translates to on stage as well, that you're actually a thoughtful, inquisitive and like opinionated person. Like I feel this way or that way, and I don't think someone necessarily has to agree, but it's certainly more interesting to watch.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, I guess you ask, well, how do you become a person like that? I mean, theoretically, you wouldn't be doing comedy if you weren't a person like that.
Right. It's just natural.
I mean, that's why you become a comic, because you somehow have some arrogant idea that your opinions are, important.
Worth watching.
Yeah, important enough that they would be entertaining.
Yeah. You should sit down and watch for a while.
And I think that sometimes can become what is the differentiation when I'm doing international stuff. Like, I think that sometimes people aren't getting, I'm a very forceful performer, a very aggressive performer.
Totally.
And so, I do feel like there's a level of space between what I'm saying and who I am that, for some reason, I find that American crowds are able to appreciate more. For better, for worse,
Yeah. Let's see, what time is it? All right, this is good. This is a nice length. Give people a nice, entertaining half hour.
It's nice that you pulled the curtain back on your own process, so now everybody knows the kind of length that you like. You've been talking about length all week long and how much length you like, and so it's nice that they know, your listeners.
Well, I've mixed it up. I mean, I've done hour and 30-minute ones. That's too long.
Right.
I even feel like an hour is actually
You
like
did an hour and 30.
I don't even remember.
No one special?
Not one like you. I've done. I think that this is the range. Before you go though, just two things. Can I talk about what you're working? Not go into detail, but I'd say you're working on something.
Sure, yeah.
You're working on. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Which is a book. You have a book. Well, actually, yeah, because it's out there.
Pump It In Me: A History of Homosexual Passive Anal Sex, and it basically just goes through the history of people getting butt fucked. From the first guy that got butt fucked, his name was Pantheus, and he was a Roman half. He was a Greek half god.
Uh-huh.
He was a demigod, and as opposed to me, I'm a demagogue.
Demigod, right?
I'm not a demigod,
Right.
And so Pantheus was famous for getting butt fucked with all 8 of Pan's flutes. So Pan was Pantheus' cousin, and Pan would play the flute, and he would play one note on the little flute, and then he would poke it into Pantheus' butt, and then he'd play the next one, hoo, and poke, 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 and that's where we get the sound that every man makes when they ejaculate. Every man makes that. That's from that.
I just made that a little while ago.
I bet you did.
So that's a fascinating book, and you did a lot of research studying butt
I
fucking.
did. I watched your sex life exclusively for about a month, just watching you get fucked up the booty.
That's really rude. That's
To watch
really
your
rude.
sex life like that?
Yeah.
You're right. You're
Yeah.
right. But I got it. It was like guerrilla journalism.
Was
you know,
I
it was
the
like,
only guy you studied for this
Yeah,
book?
well, you were the only guy I needed to. No, I'm writing a book. I'm writing my childhood memoir. In case anyone doesn't know that at this point.
They don't know that.
Yeah, it's true. I'm writing my childhood memoir, a story about growing up in Oakland with my crazy childhood and mi vida loca.
It is pretty crazy. I mean, obviously, you're going to have to buy the book and read it when it comes out. But there is, you definitely have a childhood pretty much as, you know, as, I don't know if you want to say, as difficult, as extreme as anyone's in our society could be. It's pretty,
Yeah,
it is pretty wild.
I've never met a person that grew up like me.
Yeah, no.
I don't think I have the worst. You know, I think that the opening line. I don't know if I should say the opening line.
It's up to you, man.
But you know, I think that the opening line I'm working on right now is, I didn't have the worst childhood in the world, but I might have had the weirdest, and I had a bizarre, strange interaction with life, and in many ways, I think that's what makes me the opinionated beast I am today, because I've had a really kind of sideways view of the world. I came into the world in a very sort of bizarre sort of set of circumstances.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to read this book, man. And you obviously made you already have a draft in, and so this thing's pretty far along, but
we're very close.
Yeah. So, and the book will be hopefully released by spring of next year?
I think it'll come out in spring. I mean, the publishing industry takes a phenomenally long time to do stuff, and I don't quite know why, but I'm certainly grateful for it, because it's like, it's like once it's out, you're done. I mean, I guess it's like a movie, it's like once it's out, you can't really like go back, and it's my first kind of offering to the world of this part of my sort of creative sort of consciousness, and so I really want it to be right, and it's not going to be perfect, but I want it to be the thing that it can be.
Well, I think it's great too about writing something like you're writing is that you're extremely vulnerable when you essentially confess, all these stories and feelings and emotions,
Right.
Which it can be, I imagine, pretty scary. But at the same time, it's going to win you so many fans in a very cool way.
I'm really
You're going to have a lot
hoping
of fans from this, man.
And I gotta say that,
Not me, but other people.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I have to say, like, in terms of vulnerability, like, being vulnerable in a way is like, stand up is all about power,
Uh-huh.
and power doesn't just mean being an alpha of a crowd, because we've all seen comics that are like, they alpha the crowd in a very typical way where they're just trying to be the man, and it's very boring to watch.
Yeah.
Well, real power on stage, like Maria Bamford is one of the most meek, vulnerable, like can shatter at any moment performers ever, and yet when I watch her perform, she's swinging her big fat comedy dick all over the stage with her vulnerabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. So I look forward to that. Where usually before we go, we say where we're going next. We kind of said that, but tell me again, like specifically your next like 3 or 4 days or whatever.
Yeah, I'll be at Chop Suey on the 20th of April. The People's Republic of Comedy are doing a special show, and that's in Seattle. And then I'll be at the Bridgetown Comedy Festival, and that will be in Portland, Oregon. That next weekend, the 23rd, 24th, 25th. And then this summer I got a bunch of dates. I'll be at Acme Comedy Company in Minneapolis at the end of June, and I'll be at what's the one in Indiana?
Crackers?
I'll be at that downtown Crackers, and I'll be at the Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase. Bunch of stuff.
Nice. So you got all that going on. You can check out Moshe on his website, which is moshekasher.com, and his Twitter is at
Moshe Kasher. Yeah, follow me on Twitter, everybody. I got tweets that you need to be reading.
You do. You're a good Twitter, man. You're a good tweeter.
Oh, I've been busy today, actually.
Have you? All right. And I got. Let's see. Although I added Sal's Comedy Hole in L.A. April 14th, which is next week. So I'll be there.
Logan?
No, this is a different one. But yeah, come check that out, and then off to Florida, and a couple more. I don't know, on my site. You'll see it there. All right. Thanks, Moshe. I had a good time with you, man.
Thank you, man.